Hello and welcome to Castle's Corner. Back again with the man, the myth, not quite, Jerry, as we're doing another Mythbusters series. I believe this is the fourth or the fifth installment. We have four myths that we're going to be addressing today. The first is going to be you must track your calories in order to lose fat. Second myth, you need to detox yourself regularly. The third myth, you must eat real food in order to grow muscle and be healthy, not supplements and shakes. And then the final one is don't do cardio if you're trying to build muscle, as it will burn your muscle. Now, we've all heard these before, but what's the truth of the matter? Jerry, you tell us. We're going to get into it now. So, how about it, Jerry?
Okay, let's start as in order that you just listed. We'll start with the detox. Uh, I wrote an article in my Applied Metabolics publication. It's available to any subscribers. I thoroughly researched the whole detoxification theory, if you want to call it, or process. I looked into the various suggested ways, anywhere from eating in a certain food pattern, taking certain supplements, taking saunas. There's all different methods that are suggested as a detox system, a way to detox. Now, as I said, it makes sense on the surface because there's no doubt that everybody's exposed to environmental toxins. Unless you live in some sort of bubble, you're going to be probably breathing in some bad air. There's probably going to be some toxins in food, not enough to kill you, but possibly enough to make you gradually sick. There's toxins in water. I mean, there's some water contains poisons, depending on the water supply and all that. Not enough, again, not enough to kill you, but enough to where you might not feel good and you won't know where it's coming from. You won't blame the water. So based on this, so that's where the truth lies. There is truth to that. So it would seem automatic that supplying or providing a system called a detoxification program would help you combat those almost unavoidable toxins that are in the environment. It would make sense, except that's not the way it works. There's a couple of problems which I'll get into now. First of all, you have two organs in your body that are basically very potent detoxification organs. One is the liver, and the other is the kidneys. These organs are actually mainly to detoxify things that enter your body. Your liver has a number of enzyme systems. I'm trying to remember what they are, but I can't remember. There's certain enzyme systems that actually will degrade. Let's say you ingest or inhale some sort of carcinogen. Well, it turns out there's an enzyme system in the liver that will actually detoxify or prevent that carcinogen from entering deeper in your body and causing a cellular mutation, which turns into cancer. There are certain foods, and this is where the element of truth does come into play when you're talking about detox. There are certain foods that will stimulate, let's call them the detoxification enzymes that exist in the liver. A prime example of such foods are cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, I believe turnips is in there, bok choy. All of these things contain various natural elements. Chiefly, probably the most potent one is called sulforaphane. It's found in broccoli and even more in greater concentration in broccoli sprouts. Now, the vegetables themselves don't contain sulforaphane. They contain a precursor called glucoraphanin. But what happens is when you chew these vegetables, or even when you cut them, it releases an enzyme naturally found in the vegetables called myrosinase, which basically turns or converts glucophanin into sulforaphane. So when the sulforaphane, once it happens in the body, this conversion is certain intestinal bacteria that are also capable of doing that also, by the way. But once that happens, the sulforaphane activates the primary detoxification enzymes in the liver. So in that sense, eating these foods, let's say cruciferous vegetables, really does help with a certain detoxification. But the main point is it's the liver that's doing the detoxification. Your liver handles something like 10,000, I can't remember whether it's a minute or a second, 10,000 different conversions a minute. That's your liver. I mean, this is why if your liver fails, you're basically dead because everything you eat, including protein, becomes a deadly poison. People don't realize, for example, you take protein, right? When the liver metabolizes protein, some of the amino acids are converted into ammonia. Ammonia is a toxic substance. Now, if this ammonia builds up in your body, and let's say it gets into your brain, you can go into a coma. Why doesn't it happen? Because the liver converts the ammonia produced from amino acid metabolism into urea. And the urea is excreted out by the kidneys. See how the kidneys and the liver work together. So your body has a natural detox system consisting, as long as your liver's in shape and your kidneys in shape, the bottom line is you don't need any outside detox systems. All these programs that are selling, the books, I mean, I've seen books by medical doctors who are pushing detox programs. And then if you look at the book, it turns out they're selling detox supplements. That's the point. The book is basically just a big ad to sell their detox supplements. So, you know, I mean, if you want to take some of these things, most of them are harmless, but are they going to increase the detoxification ability built into the body? No, no. They're basically a waste of money. So that's the first thing. Detox is basically, you could call it a fad. Like I said, there's certain elements of truth in it, meaning that we are exposed to various toxic substances, but the liver and the kidneys break them down. And if you really want to, control the toxic substances, the best way to do it is keep your liver and kidneys healthy. Do anything you can to keep your liver, kidneys, and healthy, and they will take care of the rest.
Now, just a quick note on that, something I'd like to mention, I mean, just because of the viewers of this channel, is when it comes to steroids, I hate to bring it up again, but when it comes to steroids, this is precisely why the injections are so much preferred to the orals, as a matter of fact, because of the way they pass through the liver, if you want to get into that.
Well, the thing is, as I wrote in I wrote an article about the also in applied metabolics. There's a misnomer. What you're saying is basically true, but there's an added statement that you have to add. In other words, injections bypass when you take anything orally, it goes to what they call first pass metabolism. Everything orally goes to the liver, and the liver basically checks it out, metabolizes it. It'll turn some certain substances into make them water soluble so they can be excreted by the kidney. Does a number of different conversions, if you want to call it that. So it's called first pass metabolism. Oral anabolic steroids are designed to resist first pass metabolism. In other words, if you took, let's say, straight testosterone in a pill form and orally, it would immediately travel to the liver. Most of it would be metabolized. Most of it, you'd be left with very little active testosterone. So what they did with anabolic steroids is they took the testosterone structure, they modified it by adding methyl groups, changing things around without getting into basic biochemistry here or steroid biochemistry. Let's say they made the oral steroids more resistant to initial breakdown, first metabolism breakdown in the liver. And that's the problem with oral steroids. Because it resists that breakdown, if you keep taking them, especially in larger amounts, they accumulate in the liver. And what happens then is the liver swells up. It's basically, the term for that is hepatitis, swelling of the liver. And the problem with that is that your liver is always producing bile. And it has certain channels in the liver where the bile travels through, and it's stored in the gallbladder. The bile is used to help digest fat and emulsify fat, turns fat molecules into smaller globules, so enzymes called lipases could digest the fat. See? Now, the problem is when the liver swells, it basically blocks those channels where the bile flows. So now the bile builds up, and as it builds up, it can cause actual destruction of the liver cells called hepatocytes, and that's where you're getting into trouble, because now you're talking about liver damage. If you keep it up, you could probably get what they call liver cirrhosis, which is scar tissue in the liver, and that could be followed by what's the next one? That could be followed by either liver failure or what's the other, liver cancer, on a worst case scenario. Most people who take this steroid, they don't get that far because they usually get off it at one point. Now, the injectables, they take them, let's say injected in your arm or butt or whatever, they do not go through the bypass. And that's why they consider it safer, because they don't go through the liver first, right? So you could say, well, the liver, your liver is protected because the injection bypasses the liver. But here's the problem. This is what people don't realize. Everything winds up in the liver. everything you put in your body winds up in the liver. So the injectables, yes, they will initially bypass the liver, but they eventually wind up in the liver. And if you take huge doses of injectable steroids or you take them too long, you're going to get the same effect as the oral. You're going to cause liver damage. It just takes a little longer, but it's still remember, everything winds up in the liver because the liver, this is the part you want to put in emphasis. The liver is the detoxification organ of the body. So everything that enters your body has to go through the liver. That's the way it works.
Now, not to get like super specific or anything, I don't want to get into esters or different chains of esters like that. But if I'm not mistaken, isn't the injectable form you actually get more of it, let's just say, in your body as compared to taking the oral form? So if you take 100 oral versus 100 injectable, you'll get more from the injection than from the oral, or am I mistaken about that?
Well, it depends on the design of the injection. Like you say, it has different carriers, different esters. I
Without
mean,
the esters, though, yeah.
yeah, I mean, you have, for example, testosterone propionate, which doesn't have a long-acting ester. That was actually the very first form of testosterone way back in the late 30s. That's the very first. I'm sorry, no, it wasn't. Methyl testosterone was, which was an oral steroid. But in other words, that was the next one, and that one's very short-acting, lasts like a day or two. So that one will give you, a burst, but then it's broken down by the liver. It's a good example to use actually, because you get an initial burst from testosterone propionate. In other words, it raises testosterone, and then it's like one of these, those missiles they set up, go straight up, and then it fails and goes right down to the ground. That's testosterone propionate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's favored by a lot of athletes who have to undergo drug testing because it brings your testosterone up and right down. So if you do it right, you can beat the drug test for testosterone, because by the time they test you, if you time it right, there's no testosterone left, and you'll show up as negative on the test. So it's good for that. But as far as the potency between the two, it's difficult to say. You know what I mean? Generally speaking, I would say that the injectables, the orals work a little bit faster. You would think the injectables work faster, but you have to understand most of them are designed to be gradually released, not except for testosterone. I mean, they have various esters. They're not meant to give you an initial burst. Otherwise, they'd be just like testosterone propionate. They'd be broken down. Now, the orals, on the other hand, they go to work right away. So the orals actually work faster than the you would think common sense. Well, I'm injecting it, plus it's got to be working faster. No, what's happening? Let's say you take an oil-based steroid like testosterone enanthate, right? Which is a typical TRT steroid. That enanthate and cypionate are what they usually use when they give it, right? What happens is when you inject it, it's in an oil base, and the oil base varies. Could be sesame seed oil, grapeseed oil, whatever. What happens is when you inject it, you get what they call a bolus. You get like a little ball of oil in the muscle, and that little ball of oil gradually breaks down over a period of anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and that's your gradual release of the hormone. And they do that to try and maintain a more stable testosterone level. But now again, the orals, there's no ester attached, so they will go to work like an hour after you take them. They're already working. Whereas the any type of injectable other than propionate will be much more gradual. They'll work pretty fast, don't get me wrong, but not as fast as an oral.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they have things like, what was it, Sustanon, where it's a whole mix of things, they mix all that in there.
Well, Sustanon is based on the fact that you have, the testosterones have different times that they, let's say, peak. Now, with testosterone, with Sustanon, you have 4 different types of testosterone. You have a quick one, almost like testosterone propionate, up, just like the oral, brings it zip up, right up. That fades in a day. That's followed by a medium-acting testosterone that lasts maybe 4 or 5 days, and then you have a kind of like a in-between short-acting medium is the third one, and the fourth one that's in testosterone is a long-acting one, just like testosterone enanthate and cypionate. The theory being, by having the gradual release of testosterone through the 4 different kinds of testosterone, you have a very steady release. And that's why it's silly. I've heard a lot of bodybuilders who will take a drug like Sustanon 250, and they'll take like 3 shots a week or even 2 shots a week. That makes no sense at all. Why are you doing that? It's a long-acting drug. It makes no sense. I mean, you're not going to get any more benefit than taking one shot a week. 2 or 3 makes no sense.
You know, just out of curiosity, you just made me think of something. If they're doing that so frequently, they're taking sustenance, and knowing bodybuilders, the kind of shots that they're taking, wouldn't that actually ball up under the skin and make a whole bunch of scar tissue
Yeah,
if you keep doing it over and over and over?
yeah, it can cause a cyst, and
Yeah,
yeah,
under the skin.
yeah, it can cause a cyst, and it can cause there can be infection involved. If you get an opening in the skin, you got a big ugly infection. I mean, worst case scenario, I don't know of any cases that it happened, but if that bacteria gets in your blood, now you have septicemia, which is blood poisoning. That has a 50% mortality rate. I'm sure somewhere in the medical literature, I can't think of any offhand, where somebody actually probably got that from taking too many steroids in the
Oh,
same,
sure.
I mean,
Several people.
if they're going to do it at all, if they're going to take, let's say, 2 sustenance shots a week, at least use common sense. Maybe do 1 shot in your delt and 1 shot in your butt, and maybe the third shot, if you can do 3, in your thigh. Don't do it in the same spot, because
Well,
again, you
keep
will get,
moving it though, yeah.
you're going to get, as you said, the oil buildup. It's not a good idea, but I don't know if anyone ever talks about that, but that would be
But
common sense.
But again, even one of those things, I mean, I don't want to make this about testosterone. Last thing I want to say about the testosterone is people always overdo it. They just end up taking way too much testosterone. They get a huge amount of side effects with no additional benefit, just more side effects. So I
You
don't know
know,
why people do that. They just don't
you know what,
research.
people have to realize. If you look at the male body, the average man produces 11 milligrams of testosterone a day. Some texts put it as low as 8 milligrams. So let's say 8 to 11 milligrams. So, I mean, when you're taking, let's say, 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week, that's way beyond the body's capacity to handle. Now, what will happen is that androgen receptors, the body will sense the extra testosterone, and new androgen receptors will open up to accommodate all that extra testosterone. But still, the bottom line is your body was not set up to handle that level of testosterone, and it is going to cause problems sooner or later. There's no doubt about it.
But anyways, we wasn't even trying to get into that one. It just came to me. But let's get to the next one here, or I should say back to the first one. You have to track your calories in order to lose fat. Now, I actually push against this. I think it's counterproductive unless you're already lean enough to start worrying about that. What do you think?
Well, the thing is, there's several ways to look at the thing. I mean, there's some people that, especially people that tend to believe in like ketogenic diets, low carbs, they'll tell you that calories are irrelevant, that carbohydrates are king, that how much carbs and what type of carbs you eat are more important than anything. And there's a certain amount of truth to that, but and the other school of thought says calories are everything. It's total calorie intake that determines how much body fat you lose. Period. End of case. They just leave it at that. In other words, all that other stuff is nonsense, counting carbs and this and that. That doesn't mean a difference. If you're overeating calories, you're not going to lose weight, and you're going to, if you eat too many calories, you're going to get fat. Now, there's a certain amount of truth to that, but the thing that always bothers me about that is they're just kind of not telling you the whole story. They're just, they're giving you, calories do count. Let me say that right off the bat. I'm not going to argue that. They do count. But there are certain things that, a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. I did an article in my applied metabolics about a guy. He was a scientist, and he wanted to test the effects of different macronutrients on body fat gain. So what he did, he designed two diets that contain the exact same number of calories. He wanted to gain weight. Remember, not lose weight. He wanted to gain weight. He wanted to see which diet put more fat on. The first diet, again, 4,100 calories, identical, exact number of calories. The first diet was a low carb diet. Again, very little carbohydrate, but the most of the calories came from fat. Because remember, fat has 9 calories per gram, so it's much more concentrated in calories. His diet was something like 70 or 80% fat. I can't remember. Huge amount of fat. The second diet was a low fat, same 4,100 calories, but it consisted of about the same amount of protein, but it was adjusted for carbohydrate count and a little and lower fat, so it would also equal 41. You could say the second one contained a lot more carbohydrates, a lot more, something like 60 or 70% carbohydrate. I can't remember exactly. So he did this diet. I forget whether it was 6 weeks, 8 weeks. At the end of the diet, he did very concise body composition tests. And what he found now, according to the calories are everything school of thought, his body composition at the end of the diet should have been the same, because he was getting the same number of calories. There should have been no difference. In fact, in fact, he I can't remember the percentage, but on the high carb diet containing the same number of calories, total calories, he put on a couple of pounds of body fat. This guy was an average.
Now I remember, I don't remember all the details, but I remember that when he was on the basically keto one, he lost 6 pounds of fat,
That's
as a
right.
matter of fact, even though
That's
his
right.
calories were so
Yeah.
high. And then when he was
Yeah,
on the carbohydrate heavy one, I think he gained 8 pounds. if
That's
I'm not mistaken.
that's a good point, and I forgot that point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what really freaked him out. He
Yeah.
actually lost body fat on the high fat diet. He lost body fat because, again, it had almost no carbohydrate. The other one had carbohydrates, same number of calories. He gained body fat. Now, again, the calorie purists would say no, he should have weighed the same. This is proof. All right, it's only one person, but this was an average guy. He wasn't a competitive athlete. He was, I think he was about 5'8", 5'10", about 160 pounds, wasn't a big guy, had a normal metabolism, had no pre-existing medical conditions. I think he tried to diet and a couple other people. They had the same results, and the point being that, the reason why the body composition differed had to do with the way the calories affected certain hormones, mainly insulin. Insulin. Yep. The high carbohydrate diet, he was getting more calories than he needed. You have to understand, this man didn't need 4,100 calories. That he was trying to gain weight. He designed it to gain weight, and he was consuming excess calories. But when he consumed the excess carbohydrate calories, he kicked out much more insulin, and that's what stimulated the fat. On the ketogenic, or the same number of calories without carbohydrates, there was a very low insulin output. So even though he ate the same amount of calories, and he shouldn't have really lost fat, he still lost fat. And that shows you the power of insulin. And this is why, and we talked about this before, why I get so angry when these jackoffs, I'm sorry, I'm going to call them names, these academic ivory tower schmucks that are on the internet, they use expressions like insulin fairy. Insulin has no effect in controlling body composition. It's an innocent bystander. Calories are everything. Insulin only makes you fat when you consume an excess of calories. Oh, bullshit. I've proven it on myself and hundreds of other people. Some of these people couldn't, including myself, could never lose weight on the standard low-fat, high-carb diet. I mean, we didn't lose weight at all. If we lowered the calories enough, yes, we lost weight, but it was so painfully slow that it was hard to stay motivated, and you were constantly hungry. It was like torture to stay on that diet. Whereas the low-carb diet, not necessarily ketogenic, even a low-carb diet, was much easier. I've been on low-carbohydrate diets as long as 10 months straight with no medical problems, no nothing. And the longest I lasted, just to give you an idea, on a high-carb, low-fat diet was 2 weeks, because by the second week, I was dreaming of pizza, and I couldn't even sleep. I was so hungry. I was in almost physical pain. I couldn't take, so the point is that I could sum it up by saying, yes, calories do count. I'm not going to say that, but the way the body handles calories varies depending on the composition of the diet. That's what the truth is.
Now, let me just take it a separate perspective here. I would say that, say, to the untrained person who just kind of regularly goes to the gym and they're overweight and that they want to lose actual fat, you want to keep going to the gym, you want to keep working out. When it comes to diets, don't diet. Focus on getting more protein every meal. Focus on eating foods that are healthier by your definition, and stop doing things which you know are stupid. Eating a pint of ice cream, drinking soda every day, drinking beers every night, those things. If you stop doing that, you are immediately going to drop a whole bunch of weight, because your body doesn't want to be that big naturally. So just by making these slow changes over time, make sure you're still exercising, you're walking and stuff to move. Your body as a machine, has to do these things. you'll lose fat just fine. Then when you get down to, let's just say, a manageable weight or something, then you take it to the next step. Now, I'm sorry, I'm not actually trying to push this right here, but I'm finishing up my 5th book right now. It's actually a diet book specifically about this. Is probably why it's so fresh in my head right now. But most people, this is what they have to do. If you're an athlete or you're playing a sport or you're serious about making progress with your physical health in your body, then I really think either tracking your calories or having a good rough idea of what you're consuming every day is kind of necessary. At least in my opinion. And if you're really trying to take it to the next level, then yeah, you have to track every single thing. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's about right.
Okay, well, so let's move on to the next one then. So, this because this will probably take a little while. You must eat real food to build muscle, not supplements and shakes.
Yeah, well, that's that. There's not a month that goes by when you don't have an article. Unfortunately, a lot of them are in medical journals where doctors will advise. I just saw one like 4 days ago where they will, in fact, they just came out with a study just like last week and made a couple of press wire things where it basically said that all of the supplements that are touted to decrease elevated cholesterol, natural supplements like red yeast rice and garlic, none of them work at all. They're complete garbage. The only thing that will actually lower cholesterol, lower low density lipoprotein is statin drugs. And was in a medical journal. In other words, they tested it. Now, here's the problem there. I didn't see, first of all, full disclosure, I did not see the actual study. I only saw what they wrote about it. And I suspect that I suspect by my past experience looking at these type of studies, is that they usually don't give the right dose of the supplements. In other words, this happens a lot with fish oil supplements. When they say fish oil doesn't work, you find that they give like 500 milligrams. And now the medicinal dose is 4 grams. I mean, it's not even half the dose. Of course, it's not going to work. And I suspect this is the case because remember, I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but a lot of these medical doctors, they're aligned and they're paid off by pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies want people to get off supplements and get on their drugs because they make billions. They make billions. Now, I don't know if this is the case here, but what I do know is I strongly suspect that this study involving where they said not a single supplement touted to lower cholesterol works. Now, I know for a fact that that's wrong based on my own experience and my experience in working with others. Because I've not recently, but I used to write diets out for people. Some of these clients came to me. I asked them to have blood tests, and sure enough, a lot of them showed a lot elevated total cholesterol, elevated LDL, low HDL, and this kind of thing. In other words, they had a lipid pattern that was basically risky for possibly a future heart attack or stroke. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to prescribe statins. I wouldn't do it anyway. So what I told them to do is I gave them a list of various supplements like red yeast rice, maybe garlic, and there was a couple of others that would lower the cholesterol. And I had them come back a month later. Now let's talking about maybe 30 people, right? Of the 30 people, 30 of them came back with lower lipid levels. Now, yes, I changed their diet. I'm not going to lie. Most of them I had to put on lower carbohydrate diets. When you go on a low carbohydrate diet, you lower something called blood triglycerides. That's fat. Blood triglycerides are a precursor for the let's say the genesis or the production of low density lipoprotein in the liver. Low density lipoprotein, when oxidized, is a risk factor for atherosclerosis and heart disease. So yes, the diet probably had a lot to do with it, but they're a lot of the times their cholesterol went down so low compared to the way it was a month earlier that it couldn't have been from the diet alone. In other words, the supplements were doing something. So I know that this is a bogus study. Now, in relation to, let's say, bodybuilding and fitness, you hear the same thing. I mean, I see people online, it's all snake oil. None of that stuff is necessary. But as you pointed out accurately, you have to look at supplements. What are supplements? Now, let's take whey protein, which is a popular supplement. What is whey? All it is concentrated food. It's just basically protein in its most elemental form without the excess fat, without carbohydrates. It's a concentrated form of protein for somebody that wants to take in, let's say, protein without having to eat a lot of protein foods, because whey protein is a very high biological value protein, meaning it's very high in essential amino acids. Your body can use most of it with no problem. Uh, I'm just thinking of something that there are people that are pushing supplements. I see ads on Facebook where they write that whey protein is only 18% absorbable. You excrete most of it. Our supplement is 100% absorbable with no waste. Well, when you look into what their magical supplement is, all it is amino acids. That's it. Amino acids, nothing else. And it's true. Amino acids are the elemental. That's what, when protein is digested, they become amino acids through various enzymatic steps. So, yes, amino acids are completely absorbed. But here's the problem. The problem is when you look at protein digestion, your body actually prefers protein, to be provided in kind of a smaller amounts, so as not to overwhelm the liver and other digestive organs. So if you take in, let's say, the same amount of amino acids and the same amount of protein, what's going to happen is the amino acids, because of their extremely rapid absorption, which is true, they're just like go right into you. But the liver is going to actually oxidize most of the amino acids. So the truth is that is reversed. You're probably going to get 18% of the value of the amino acids, but whereas the whey protein, you'll get most of the protein, because the protein digestion is more orderly. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not saying there's no value in taking essential amino acids or any amino. It's under certain circumstances, they could be of tremendous value, especially individual amino acids like leucine and tyrosine. These things can have very potent effects in the body. So I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is this idea that all supplements are not necessary. They're all snake oil. I mean, speaking of myself, I'd be in big trouble without supplements because I don't eat a balanced diet. I admit it. I do not eat a balanced, so-called balanced diet. I don't eat the required number of fruits and vegetables every day. If I didn't take supplements, I would be in trouble because I'd be missing a lot of essential nutrients. And as I've said in my applied metabolics, I've said it in previous videos, supplements are just that, supplements. They're there to supplement what you're not getting in the diet. Everybody has to look at their diet, look at the way they be honest with themselves and say, well, let's say I'm not eating fruit. I don't like fruit. So I got to definitely take a vitamin C supplement because the body doesn't make vitamin C. Let's see, I'm not eating this food and that food. So maybe I'm not getting enough B vitamins. So I need to get a B complex vitamin. But generally speaking, I think everybody should take a vitamin mineral, and I call it insurance because it's not going to hurt you, but at least it's there if you need it. If you're not getting the particular nutrients that are included in a vitamin mineral, by taking it, you're assured that you are going to get it. And the thing is, it's not going to harm you. I mean, if there was any chance of toxicity involved or this and that, or it's going to hurt your liver, I'd say, no, you got to be careful. No, it's not even a question. It's harmless. So again, supplements vary. When somebody said to me, what's the best supplement? It's a very hard question to answer because it varies with the individuals. I mean, I would recommend, well, I was going to say I wouldn't recommend creatine to somebody that's not involved in exercise, but I can't say that anymore because the last couple of years, they've come out with a number of studies showing that creatine is of value to people that are not involved in weight training at all. Elderly people, it helps to maintain muscle. It has effects on the brain. It helps maintain brain function. It does a lot of different things in the body that have nothing to do with bodybuilding. So, I mean, that's a health aspect. That's not a bodybuilding. But the point is, again, you have to look at your diet, look at the way you eat, and adjust your supplement intake accordingly. I mean, to say that all supplements are snake oil, but I will add, there is a problem with the supplement industry because it's not the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, which is supposed to monitor the food supplement industry. They don't really have enough people to do it. So unfortunately, there's a lot of unscrupulous companies that get away with stuff like underdosing the supplements. Sometimes the supplements don't even have the nutrients in there. There's a lot of problems with the supplement industry. So What do you do about that? Well, you want to get supplements from companies that have a good track record of quality. Don't buy these no-name. I was reading something the other day where a lot of the supplements that are sold on Amazon are made by a particular company in China. They have 60 different brands, 60 different brands that they're selling on Amazon. And this is a shocking, what I'm about to tell you is going to freak you out. When they analyzed all these supplements, again, 60 different brands, none of them contained anything. They had no nutrients. They were duds. They were nothing in there at all. All of them came from China. And as I said before, I've said it for a couple of years now, anything from China, you got to there's a red flag there because China has, regardless of what they say, they got very poor quality control when it comes to supplements and food over there. I mean, their amino acids, a lot of amino acids come from China. Unfortunately, a lot of the steroids that are sold in the black market labs, the raw material is, guess what, from China. And there's problems there. They don't have good quality control. That's probably one of the reasons why people get screwed up when they take black market steroids. So,
I believe it. I believe it. On top of that, what I know about from China, and I literally probably say this 6, 7 times a week to clients. I'm a big fan of mushrooms. I'm a big fan of eating mushrooms. I'm a big fan of mushroom supplements for a large variety of reasons. Everything from microdosing to cordyceps for your lungs to lion's mane for your brain. All these things, but you don't ever buy your mushrooms from China. It's probably one of the dumbest things you can do. Just don't buy any mushroom supplement because the air is polluted. It gets in the mushroom gills, etc. I mean, that's my knowledge about it. But one thing I would say, I always think it's kind of funny, at least from my perspective, is whenever I hear these arguments from these whoever the hell they are. A famous one's Rich Piana. I love Rich Piana, but he was very wrong about this. He always, you have to eat real food. Real food, God damn it. He always said, it's cool, but I mean, here's the thing is, even if you are like a millionaire, it is so freaking hard to have the perfect diet, the perfect food laid out for you to eat every single day without supplements, just because of the way that we're doing plot farming. We're reducing the actual nutrients in the soil and the contents in the food. I mean, I could keep going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But long story short, they never actually have good arguments against it. They just say it's bad. They don't really explain why. My argument would be when you're having a protein shake, you want to be very cautious that you sip it slowly so it has time to basically start digesting your mouth. I won't get into that, but basically start digesting with your mouth and kind of sip it over time. That way you realize that you're eating something because your brain doesn't even register that you've eaten something for like 20 minutes or something. So again, sip it slowly, kind of enjoy it, chew on it. I know this sounds weird with a protein shake, but again, do you need a protein shake? You certainly don't. No. Is it convenient for some people? Absolutely. I probably have 2 or 3 a day because I require a lot of protein. I don't always have time to sit down and eat a meal. Same thing with supplements. Lots of times people, they don't like vegetables, or they just don't have access to fresh fruit or access to fresh vegetables, or they can't afford tons of meat. So what do? They buy eggs, they buy egg powders, they buy whey protein shakes. It's a cheaper, safer alternative. It's a good way to be healthy. The protein shake, like you always pointed out, it's just pre-macerated protein. Essentially, it's like pre-digested protein. Is all it is.
Well, as far as like what Rich says about what he said about food, get it from food. I kind of believe there's some truth to that. Food should always come first. Don't get me wrong. But again, there's problems with some of the purity of food and this and that. But even if we eliminate all that, it's the concept that the idea that medical doctors try and promulgate that you could get all your nutrients from food. That's what I have a problem with, because when I used to give nutrition seminars, the very first question I'd ask every time is, I'd say, by a show of hands, how many people in this room are following balanced diets? When I'd say that the first time, let's say there was 50 people in the room, 40 of them would raise their hand. I say, okay, now, of the people that are of the people here who are having balanced or eating balanced diets, how many of you include at least 5 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day? And now, by show of hands, and now about 10 hands would go up, right? It went from 40 now down to 10. Third question: how many in this room are eating, let's say, foods that what was the other one? That contain, let's say, essential fat and what is it?
Amino acids.
Yeah, fiber, And what was the other one? I can't remember. There was another. Oh, dairy foods. I said, how many are in the room of the remaining, let's say, people are including foods, some dairy foods and foods that contain essential fats and oils. And now remember, the last one was 10, and now it would be 3. And then I think I mentioned one other category. By the time I got to the end, it went from 40 people raising their hand to 1.
Oh,
So
wow.
so what's the point of the story? And then the one person who said they
The
were
one
eating
was, who was that guy? Like, was your son or
Well-
something? Who was it?
well, it turned out that after the seminar in the hallway, I went up to him. I said, "It's interesting that you're the only person who's consuming. Could you tell me your diet?" It turns out he misunderstood. He was lacking.
Oh.
He was lacking several. First of all, he was not eating enough fruits and vegetables. He thought if he had 1 apple a day, that meant that he was getting enough fruit. He just was completely misinformed. So he was not eating a balance. It turns out it was 0.
Okay,
See,
that actually makes more sense. Yeah.
yes, so the point being that all these people that thought they were eating balanced diets, or what they thought was a balanced diet, were not eating balanced diets. And the doctor's statement that you should get all your food from all your nutrients from natural food is based on the idea that they're all eating balanced diets. But I have never met a single person who eats a truly balanced diet. So what does that mean? That means they're always going to be missing some new. A lot of people I know, I'm sure you do too, the dairy group is especially, a lot of people will not drink milk, will not eat cheese. I understand why, but if they don't take a calcium supplement, and if they don't eat enough vegetables, if they don't need to take a calcium supplement, where are they going to get their calcium? It's going to be leached from the bone. They're going to have all kinds of problems. You need calcium for muscle contraction. And what about if they don't eat leafy green vegetables and nuts? Where are they getting the magnesium from? God, magnesium is so important. It activates 300 enzymes. Magnesium helps control blood pressure. Magnesium stabilizes ATP, which is your primary energy source of cells. In other words, without magnesium, your blood vessels, your nitric oxide gets all messed up, and your blood vessels tighten, and you got hypertension, and you got cardiovascular disease. I mean, it's nuts.
Basic things, real D3. I mean, drinking enough water, zinc.
Right.
I mean,
and to think that just taking a little magnesium supplement is going to help you. Why wouldn't you? That doesn't make any sense.
How many times you heard people say to you, I don't like taking pills?
Right.
How many times have you heard that?
Especially women.
Yeah.
Women. Oh, Jerry, like I'll talk to a woman and I'll tell her to take. Oh, yeah, I can't. I don't like those horse pills. That's I always say horse pill. They think that these pills are like the size of your fist or something.
Yes.
I said no, and I always use vitamin D. I said, look at vitamin D. Did you ever see a vitamin D supplement? I said to him,
Can't even see it.
It's a little gelatin capsule that is so tiny that you could give it to a 2-month-old infant and nothing would happen. It wouldn't choke. It's a tiny little. In fact, I've dropped vitamin D pills on the floor. They're so small that I can't even find them without a magnifying glass. That's how small they are. I mean, anybody could take. All right, it's true that most vitamins aren't that small, but no, you can get
some of them. Yeah, some of them, but you can get intelligent ones.
Yeah, or you could take. There's even powder forms that you can mix in. There's all kinds of options.
It is always women too who are complaining, and why is it always women? I mean, they're complaining about taking a horse pill, but then they'll choke on their boyfriend's toothbrush, and why are you gonna complain about a pill? What's wrong with you?
Well, let's put it this way: a lot of them take bigger things in their mouth than a pill. But I'm not going to
exactly. That's why I said toothbrush.
I'm not going to get into specific details on that. But the point being that it bothers me that doctors are telling people to get, that can get all their nutrients from food, because that's going to set people up for future deficiency diseases, which will be marked by things that they don't normally tie into, like hypertension, cardiovascular disease, arthritis. A lot of various diseases could result from a long-term nutritional deficiency. And for a doctor, and I've said this actually in a documentary, for a doctor to tell people not to take supplements if they're lacking the nutrient, to me, amounts to medical malpractice. And if I was a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not saying this, but if I was, I'd say doctors are telling that to people so they will be sick, which is more
Yep.
money to the doctors.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, have you read the book? I'll email you the name. Maybe I'll send you a copy too. Have you read the book Paindemic? I can't recall who wrote it. I read it last year.
No, I
It's
haven't.
it's entirely about this subject. It is beautifully researched and laid out from I can't remember the journalist's name, but she does a lot of work like this, and it's a beautifully laid out book. I'll send you the name. It's Paindemic.
Okay.
Great book,
Okay, no,
great
I
read.
haven't read that. Haven't read
Probably
that one.
like it's a thin book too. It's probably like 200 pages. But anyways, let's get to the last one here. Start wrapping up. So last one, cardio burns muscle. If you're trying to build muscle, don't do cardio.
Okay, well, that stemmed from a study done a couple of years ago. I think it was in untrained subjects, where if they did cardio work in proximity to their weight work or their resistance training, the cardio interfered with muscle building or muscle protein synthesis. It kind of put a wrench in there. And from the theory was that when you do cardio, you raise a protein in your body. You increase a protein called AMPK. Now you have like these two proteins, AMPK and one called the mammalian target of rapamycin, or mTOR. mTOR is a building protein. It causes cellular growth. mTOR is what's stimulated when you take amino acids and when you exercise with weights. Leucine in particular is a very strong promoter of mTOR. mTOR stimulates, you could say, stimulates muscle protein synthesis and subsequent muscle growth. AMPK works in reverse. When AMPK goes up, it's an energy sensor in muscle. What happens is when energy stores such as glycogen in muscle get low, the muscle can detect that, and it kicks out AMPK. AMPK turns off or blocks mTOR, blocks any kind of muscle protein synthesis, and the emphasis now is on providing energy. So AMPK lets you tap into fat stores, like intramuscular fat stores in your muscle, to provide you with energy. So basic fact, anytime energy is low, AMPK is kicked out. Now the problem is, again, AMPK blocks the anabolic processes that result in increased muscle mass. See? So this guy, starting out with that, tested these untrained people. He had them do aerobics. I forget whether it was either before or after the workout. I don't remember, but in proximity to the weight workout or resistance workout. And sure enough, it blocked their gains. They didn't, gain properly. Well, anyway, this has gone back and forth over the years, where a lot of scientists make flat statements that if you do aerobics close to your weight workout, you will completely inhibit the gains, right? Well, it turns out the more recent studies that looked at that found that it wasn't true. And here's the deal. It's only true with extended aerobic workouts. In other words, you have to get your energy stores so low that it causes a significant release of AMPK. In other words, so what does that mean in practical terms? The guys that do, let's say, an hour aerobics, an hour straight aerobics or more, let's say some of them do 2 hours, or women, they are definitely in danger of blocking, if not necessarily losing muscle, but blocking muscle growth. And the secondary reason is not just AMPK, but the longer you work out with aerobics, the greater the release of cortisol. Now, cortisol comes into play. Again, it works with AMPK. When the energy stores in muscle get low, the first reaction is to get the AMPK out to stimulate, the conversion of fat into calories to help you. But now cortisol comes in because cortisol helps to release carbohydrates in the body to provide energy too. And if you're low on carbohydrates, let's say you have low muscle glycogen or low liver glycogen already, let's say you've been on a ketogenic diet and you decide you want to do an hour and a half of aerobics, well, after the first 60 minutes, you're going to get a considerable release of cortisol. And what's going to happen is that's going to go into the muscle and break down the muscle into amino acids. And it particularly works on the branched chain amino acids, because 60% of your muscle is branched chain. And it's going to basically basically break them down, send them to the liver, where they're going to be converted into glucose in a process called gluconeogenesis. So, but the point being, and this is the practical take-home point, the most recent studies that I've seen, in fact, I actually wrote, I think, either 2 or 3 articles about what they call concurrent training, meaning doing aerobics in close proximity to resistance training. I've written about two. The first article basically left it kind of in the air. In other words, I concluded from the available studies at that time that it may or may not interfere. I wasn't sure. The second study, it looked like it depended on the amount of time. In other words, if you didn't overdo the aerobics, there was no problem. By the time I did the third article, this is the way it stands now, evidence shows that there is no interference with aerobic training, with weight training, if you do it, even if you do it right afterwards, as long as you don't overdo it. If you do more than an hour straight, there might be a little bit of muscle interference. Now, I'm going to, in full disclosure, I will admit, when I wrote the first article years ago, I used to do aerobics as much as 5 or 6 days a week. I always followed it after my weight workout. Always did up to an hour of aerobics. I did, right. This is years ago. When I wrote that article, did the first article, did some research because they weren't sure. I actually cut my aerobics down when I did my leg training. I figured because the legs are mostly involved in the aerobics I do, I said to myself, well, if it's going to be an interference effect, it would be with the thigh muscles. So I don't want to work my legs hard, then do aerobics and cancel out all the weight, the benefits of the weight workout. So to this day, I still don't do the only workouts I don't do aerobics on are when I train my legs. But now it's kind of a different reason. It's not so much I'm afraid of muscle loss. It's afraid that I'm not as strong as I used to be. So when I train my legs are so dead, I couldn't do aerobics even if I wanted to. I'd have to wait like 4 hours. And by the way, that is a way around it. In case anybody is worried about losing muscle from aerobics, all they have to do is separate the resistance training and the aerobic training by about 4 hours. And in other words, let's say you do your weight resistance workout in the morning. If you want to do aerobics and not worry about any interference effect, just do it in the afternoon, early evening. There will be absolutely zero interference effect. Or you could do your aerobics if you don't train every day. You could do your aerobics on the days, let's say your off days, or the days you don't do resistance training. That solves the problem too. So,
now, just real quick, I would say that the kind that you're doing would have a big impact.
yeah.
So some people consider aerobics to be sprinting on the treadmill for an hour and then they're going to go do their workout. That's not the same thing as somebody like me who walks on the treadmill for 45 minutes and then goes to do my workout. That's a completely different thing. In one case, I mean, that person who's running or sprinting or doing whatever kind of high intense form of cardio, they're burning a lot of glucose. They're burning up their energy like freaking crazy. They're going to have a terrible workout probably. Somebody like me, I'm literally just taking a walk. It's a big difference. Even if it's a inclined treadmill, it's a big difference.
Just to underscore, you just reminded me of something I wrote in one of my articles. When they tested the specific types of various aerobic exercise, you want to call it that caused the most interference, they found that running caused the greatest degree of interference with muscle gains. Whereas if you did, let's say, a stationary bike for the same amount of time, get this, no interference. But running, in other words, it depends on the mode of aerobics you're doing. That's a good point. Running, if you're really worried about it, is not good to do in close proximity. In other words, these guys that will and I was guilty of that myself years ago. I used to do, when they had a running fad in the 70s, and a lot of the bodybuilders started jogging. I remember jogging with famous bodybuilders, Mike Mentzer and his brother Ray. We would, there was a park a block away from Gold's Gym. Immediately after the weight workout, we'd walk 2 blocks in the park and we'd jog for about 5 miles. None of us knew then, this way before they had this idea that aerobics, we did it right after the weight workout. Now, I mean, you look at Mike Mentzer and Ray, I mean, they were tremendous. They didn't show any signs of muscle interference at all. They took steroids. You could say that too, but still, I wasn't taking steroids. I didn't notice any interference either. So, that's why I always had doubts about that idea, about the aerobics.
Well,
So
just back to having a good workout too. I mean, I would just say again, anecdotally, why I personally do this is I like to be extremely focused in absolutely anything that I do, and of course, that includes my workout. I think I probably got my focus originally from my workouts, as a matter of fact.
yeah,
But what I do is I have a very busy day. I have, a million things going on. When it's time for me to work out, I like to do my cardio as a way to focus myself in on my workout. So I use it as like hype me up time. I'll be walking on the treadmill, literally thinking about the order of my exercises. I'll be looking at my book, my weights, my reps from the week before. I'll be thinking about how important it is that I make this happen. I have a lot of people, depending on me, who look up to me, all these things. I need to lead by example. I use this as time to prepare myself for my workout. And I go do my workout, which at this point, because I'm focused very intently, it's a 20, 25-minute workout. You guys know how my workouts go. I'm in and I'm out, 3 to 4 sets, 20, 25 minutes, I'm gone.
you
And
know,
that's how I do it.
it's funny that you say that because I can honestly say I've gotten some of my best creative ideas while
Walking.
while doing either walking or on an elliptical machine. I'm not saying that my mind goes, you see, when I'm lifting the weights, as I'm sure you understand, I'm focusing on the muscle I'm working. That's all I'm thinking about. I'm like Arnold used to say, he used to say when he worked his bicep, he pictured mountain peaks.
Hmm.
I'm, I wouldn't go so far as to use that type of illusion, but in other words, I do focus on my mind, and my total focus is on the muscle, whatever muscle I'm working. But when I'm on the aerobics, it's kind of automatic. You don't require a lot of focus to do it.
You would
So
think.
yeah, what happens is my mind, whether it's more blood circulation to the brain, I have another theory about that. When you do aerobics, you stimulate certain peptides in the brain, like brain derived, there's a BDNF, it's called, brain derived, and I can't remember, neuropathic, whatever, I can't remember the exact name, but BDNF, a brain derived neurotropic factor, it's called. That actually stimulates actual repair, and it optimizes brain function, and it goes up when you do aerobics. And I'm not saying that that's why I get more creative when I'm doing aerobics. All I know is a lot of my best ideas I've gotten when I've been involved in, let's say, aerobic activity, something like that.
Well, I can actually speak on this. And actually, I know this at least. I don't know what you're talking about precisely, but I know this about it. I know that it actually interacts with your vestibular system. So linear eye movement, moving your eyes laterally, as opposed to in a straight line per se. So when you're walking, you're kind of shuffling your eyes back and forth, left and right, making progress. When you do that, you actually activate a completely different part of your brain. And when it comes to, well, I'll just leave that alone because I don't want to dig into it. We got to end up here. But I mean, and on top of that, also, when I can't remember exactly what freaking study this was, but there's been several on it. And after you exercise or after you perform cardio, you have better short-term and long-term memory retention, as well as increased learning skills and a bunch of other things that go up as well. Another video. We got to wrap this up here, but
Yeah.
anyways, would you mind telling us how to find you, Jerry? I mean, we already know, and it'll be in the
Yeah.
description, of course. But just real quick, please.
Okay. Well, I'm on Facebook. I have a face. I'm on Instagram under my name. I have my own YouTube channel, Jerry Brainham YouTube. I put on new videos there every Tuesday. Actually, it's late Monday morning, but it's Tuesday, actually. It's officially Tuesday. I put a new video on every week. And of course, you have my publication, Applied Metabolics, www.appliedmetabolics.com. And it's like average 30 to 40, 45 pages so a month. No ads, pure information. And it has the advantage. I mean, a lot of people can pass on information, but very few people can boast of having 62 years of experience to back it up, because there are certain things, as you know, that you can only learn from experience that you can't learn in an academic environment. In other words, these things can't be taught. You have to learn by doing, and this is one of the advantages I have. Of course, I can impart the knowledge I have accumulated over 6 decades into this publication, but I also, of course, include a lot of new evidence-based information that's kind of off the beaten path. In other words, I don't write about the stuff you find on the typical websites or on blogs. My stuff is a little bit different. I write for people that are fairly intelligent. I don't write in technical language like a medical journal like some of these other people do. I write in plain English. I have over 45 years, something like 9,000 published articles, so I know how to write. So, and I know how to communicate to the public. So it's easily understandable by anyone who has gotten as far as the 6th grade. And even if people don't want to read, Microsoft has a app where if you activate it, it'll actually read you. It can be used on any platform, a computer, a laptop, whatever, even your phone. I think I never tried on a phone, but it probably could, and it'll actually read you the article if you don't want to read it yourself. So, I mean, it's very inexpensive. I haven't raised the price in the 8 years that I've had it. A lot of other people have, but I'm trying to combat, just like we do in these videos, all the misinformation and nonsense. I want to give people the truth, because all my life, from the time I was a child, I've been a seeker of truth. I want to know what the truth is. I want to know the mechanics. I think there's a lot of people out there that do want to know the truth, and for them, the applied metabolics is ideal, because I'll never lie to anybody, and they'll always get practical, useful information they could use today. Not this stuff there's a lot of stuff that I find interesting. All the time I come across stuff that I find fascinating, but I look at it and say, well, can anyone use this today? No. If you can't use it, what's the point of writing about it? And that's for other people to do. Some people will write articles and books about, how the brain's going to change, and in 20 years they're going to be able to upload your brain into a computer so you live forever. I mean, that's stuff that's interesting, but I can't see the practical value today. Because so I write about stuff that people can use today. When I write about anti-aging information or research, I write about stuff you could do today, and I don't lie to anybody. I don't say, doing this is going to make you live forever. What I say is some of these techniques will increase what is known as health span. In other words, the time that you're healthy throughout your life, so that when you reach your, let's say, past 50, you don't suddenly go into a downhill trend where you just degenerate, where your body falls apart, your brain falls apart. There's ways to keep fit all the way to the end. So, when you do go, you go in relatively good health, maybe in your sleep or something like that. You're not going to drop dead of a heart attack or get cancer, or hopefully something like that. So that's what it's good. It's, again, www. Applied Metabolics. And, anyone who subscribes, they could send me an email. I'll send them an invitation to join. I have a private Applied Metabolics Facebook page where every day, 7 days a week, I put new information on there about exercise training and general medicine, new studies. I have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage where current subscribers can send me short questions about anything they might have read in Applied Metabolics, or anything that comes to mind relating to exercise and fitness. I'll answer them as a bonus for their subscription, because I appreciate their subscription. Obviously, I'm not going to answer unsolicited questions, because I only have a certain amount of time, and I'm going to give that to my subscribers.
And I would say as well, by the way, just a point on your newsletter. I haven't got a chance to touch on this before, but when it comes to learning, guys, the actual concept of learning is kind of misunderstood, and it's never properly used or taught in schools. But one of the key components to learning is actually just spaced repetition, number one. Another key component is repetition in the actual material you're reading. And then another component is actually being able to form a summary in your own words. So what Jerry does is he writes these beautiful articles. They're very comprehensive. He makes the same point multiple times in the article, different ways. So you see it different ways. You can associate with it different ways. Then he summarizes it at the end. And if you're a subscriber, you keep going back again and again and again, which means you reread some of the articles again and again and again, which is spaced repetition. So this is some of the best ways to really learn. And Jerry has, I don't know if it's by design or accidentally, kind of set it up in a beautiful way for it. I've been taking advantage of it for years, even before I knew how to learn properly. I thought I was a dummy, so I would do it anyways. But it's a very efficient system he has, guys, and I would really recommend that you guys subscribe to it. And, Jerry, just always thank you so much for doing this. We're going to try to have you back next week with some more myths, I guess. Was it by accident or design? I'm curious.
What's
Just
that?
how you write? Is it just how you write with the summary and the multiple examples and all that? Is it just how you write?
It's just my attempt to make things as clear as possible, because the way I look at it, if you don't write with a certain amount of clarity, you failed as a writer. In other words, if I use highfalutin language that doesn't technical term people, I'm just impressing myself. It doesn't do any good. So important points, as you point out, I tend to repeat in different forms, so the person gets a full and complete understanding, and more importantly, they retain that information so they could use it in their own lives. That's what makes it practical. So yeah, To answer your question, it's something I just kind of evolved into. It's not something that I purposely, started to do. I just began to realize that this is probably the most effective way to communicate. Because when I first wrote, or when I first started writing, I should say, I was writing all my life, but I tended to write a little bit too technical. I remember handing an article once to a guy named Fred Hatfield, was a famous powerlifting champion. He used to call him Dr. Squat because he held a world squat record.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was,
yeah.
he was the editor of a magazine that Weider had in the early 80s called Sports Fitness. And he had me write for him. And I remember he wanted me to interview a couple of scientists, which I did. And when I handed in the article, I didn't translate what they said. I just quoted them exactly. And these guys talked extremely technical. And he started to read the article. And I remember him saying, he looked up, he says, "What does all this mean?" I said, "What do you
Yeah.
mean?" He says, "I mean, what do you think the average person reading this will understand this?" And I said, "Yeah, you're right, Fred. I guess you're right." So I completely rewrote the article. And I learned a valuable lesson there, that you have to always keep the audience in mind when you're writing. When I write, in fact, when I pick out topics for applied metabolics, my very first consideration is, will this topic interest a large number of people? And if the answer is no, I discard it.
See,
I always
see,
want to
that's
write. Go ahead.
sorry, that's too funny. I mean, I literally discovered the same exact thing in two places, in my writing and in my YouTube channel videos. My original YouTube channel videos, I spent like 30 hours making. They were extremely technical, and nobody watched them. And
Right.
they were fun for me. And I think I was like, I don't even know what I was trying to do. I was trying to make a point, but in a very articulate way, but it completely backfired. So I went through the past, God knows how long, basically I take everything that I know, I take all the complicated stuff, and I basically pretend I'm explaining it to a child. And I try to dumb it down, simplify it, pictures, images, graphics, words, whatever I got to do, demonstrations, examples,
Yeah.
prompts to make it stick. Because
Yeah.
we want the knowledge to stick. I don't want you guys to hear us and be like, oh, what a nice conversation. I forgot everything. No,
Right.
we need it to stick, guys.
Right.
This has to stick.
You know, people that study writing say that for popular literature, like magazines or stuff that's written for the public rather than scientists or specialists, you should aim to. I know this sounds funny. You should aim to write at a sixth grade level.
Oh,
Sixth
Jesus,
grade,
really?
yeah, sixth grade. Now
Most people.
that doesn't mean you're writing stuff like Dick and Jane ran up the hill and had their wagering. No, no. What you do is you write in a manner that doesn't require a person to take out a dictionary.
Yeah.
To, I had a good friend of mine. Quick anecdote. I worked with him at the magazines. And I shouldn't mention his name because I don't know. I haven't seen him in years. But I don't want to embarrass him. But he was a very good writer. He edited quite a few magazines. He was the editor in chief, and he was a very intelligent guy. But he loved words. We used to travel together when Weider sent us on trips. When we'd hang out together, we became good friends. And I said to him, where'd you get your particular writing style? Because he used extremely complex words that almost nobody. I admit I didn't understand most of them, and I have a pretty good vocabulary. I was curious, and he said, "I've always loved words since I was a child. I love words. I collect words." So I tried to gently ask him. I said, "Well, what happens if somebody reads your article?" Because people behind his back came to me and said they hate his writing because they can't understand what he's saying. I didn't want to say that to him though. So I said to him, "What happens if somebody reads your articles and just doesn't understand the particular vocabulary you're using?" I'll never forget what he told me. You know what he said? He said, "Fuck them. They can go look it up in a dictionary."
I mean, I respect that actually. I kind of respect
Yeah.
that because if somebody wants the information bad enough, they'll look it up. But the thing is, that's
Yeah.
a extremely small percentage of people in the
Yeah,
world who would be willing to do that.
I would conjecture that most people would not bother to take out a dictionary. They're going to take that article,
No,
they're going to throw it against the wall or in the garbage.
they're gonna go, what the gibberish is that?
Yeah,
And that's
no.
it.
I mean, this guy loved to use what they call archaic words. Those are words
Oh,
that are no longer in use, that were used in maybe the 16th century.
I
How
like those too. I like reading that stuff, but
I think they're. Hey, listen, I love words myself. I love words, just like this guy.
you
But
don't
I
put
know
it in
better.
there.
I don't put them in my writing because I know people get very angry. I mean, the
Save them
things,
for the spelling bees, you know?
yeah, the things they said about this guy, I mean, they hated his guts because they thought he was trying to make him look stupid. They took it personal. He
Oh,
wasn't trying to do
Jesus.
that. His motivation was only that he loved words and he loved using them. That was it. But it didn't translate properly. You know what I mean? So he
Maybe you
wasn't.
should have tried poetry or something.
I don't know. He just
Become a wordsmith.
no. The way his sentence structure, everything was perfect. He was a good writer, except for the use of that highfalutin language. That was the only problem with this guy.
Mm.
That was his thing. There's no way you were going to change his mind.
Thank you so much again, brother.
Okay, take care.
Have a great night.
You too. Bye bye.